is invaluable to ensuring all Oregonians have full and unfettered access to our election system. So I grew up in the town of John Day in Grant County in Eastern Oregon. I have spent most of my career in public service, starting as an administrative assistant in the Crook County Juvenile Department. Along the way, I also taught elementary school students in Polk County, mentored homeless and runaway youth in Marion County, and worked with teens aging out of foster care in Washington County. But my longest career was spent as a government performance auditor, beginning in the Multnomah County Auditor's Office, and later I went on to serve as the elected Multnomah County Auditor. In 2009, I was elected as the Portland City Auditor. Since leaving office, I've attained a Master of Fine Arts degree and have been fortunate to be able to pursue my passion for writing. I understand that I've been asked here in part to provide an update on the transition of this office. And as you may know, the Secretary of State's office is no stranger to transition. In the last 8 years, we've had 6 secretaries of state. I think six in 8 years is just plenty. When the governor asked me to serve, I agreed, but not because of my own political aspirations. I have no intention of running for the job when it's on the ballot next year. Instead, my goal is to right the ship, so to say, to keep the Secretaries of State's office functioning smoothly and with integrity, and providing steady leadership and rebuilding public trust. That is the most important thing I have to do in the next 15 months. To that end, I've been meeting with each of our division directors and agency staff to learn more about their unique responsibilities. From archives to audits to elections to the corporation division, it's been a great learning opportunity. And I'm continually impressed with their professionalism and commitment to public service in the employees I've met. I would be happy to answer your questions, and I look forward to working with each of you. And thank you for inviting me here.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. Council members, any questions, comments for the secretary? And if you want to ask a question or make a comment, please use raise your hand button or press *9 on your phone and introduce yourself. Even if you introduced yourself in the chat, but when asking a question, please introduce yourself again.
Please.
I see Anastasia raised her hand.
Yes, this is Anastasia Gazzi. Lavon, I understand that you are an accomplished writer. May I ask, what are you writing now? What is your project that you are working on?
Well, so far, I have 2 books started. Another one in the series that is set in Eastern Oregon with a female protagonist named Maggie Blackthorn. And the other is set in New Mexico. And I'm not sure which of those 2 I will pursue after I get back in the writing groove, but maybe both.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I have a question for you, Secretary. This council has quite a few bright ideas about how to improve the outreach to underrepresented communities and how to better inform them about the elections. And later today, we will be talking about some of these ideas and how to implement them. But we understand that outreach work requires some funding, and we also know that funding is quite limited. So is there any chance that there will be more funding available in the future to do the outreach work to communities that are traditionally marginalized and do not actively participate in elections?
Well, we are striving for that. We believe very strongly that all potential voters need to have outreach and need to know that what's happening in our state and in their communities. And I honestly, I'm not sure if we've ever made that specific ask, but I think that is a terrific idea. And I'll bring it back to my staff and we'll chat about it and do our best, because we certainly agree with you that plenty of outreach is needed, an understanding of what the entire election process is and how all of it, age-wise and who are able to vote in this state should find we will help find a way to make sure that that's possible.
Excellent. And we have quite a few ideas. In fact, we had a work group which developed a toolkit. And this toolkit is to help council members and elections division and anybody else who is involved in elections to do better outreach to our communities, especially people with low English proficiency. Thank you for your response. And we're looking forward to your work with your staff on how to make up some money for that.
I'm going to do my best, because once again, I believe very strongly in making sure that all of our community members are able to use their voting rights and vote for candidates and issues that they believe in strongly. And there's not much more I can say than that about it. I will report back to you about all of the issues that you're interested in and see where we are. I should say
thank you very much.
We will report back to you, because it's not just me, let me tell you. It's a big team.
Yeah, it's a great team. I see Ben Morris has his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to share a little bit more in response to that question. There are a couple things happening this year that I think are relevant. One is we have funding again for our PSA campaign, which is a helpful way of raising awareness of election issues. Last year, it was translated into 6 languages, and we'll be doing so again this year. The budget for that isn't nearly as big as we'd like it to be, but we continue to demonstrate that it's effective in getting people to go to OregonVotes.gov, go to the voters pamphlet website that you guys have set up, where the different versions are posted. So we're going to continue to make the case for more funding for that. And I think the legislature is slowly but surely starting to see the value in paid communication around these issues. So we were hoping for more funding in the future. Also, Senator Casey Jama has agreed to introduce a bill that will expand the number of languages that the Translation Advisory Council is able to work on too, which is another tool we have to reach more people. So 2 things happening in the legislature this year that are relevant to that question. And then next year in the long session, when the legislature meets for a full 6 months, we'll have even more opportunities. We'll also have a new secretary. I'm sorry, not next year. 2025, when the legislature meets for the long session. We'll have more opportunities. At that point, we'll have a new Secretary of State after the next election, and we're pretty sure that person will be supportive of this effort as well. So, taking those kind of requests to the legislature during the long session is when you can get the real funding. That's when the budget's written for each cycle. So that's the next really big opportunity for things like that. Thanks.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on your comment about different materials being translated into several languages. I was wondering if there are any metrics that allow to track participation of marginalized communities in the elections. If there are such metrics, then this can help you to make the case for increased budget. So if what we are doing is working, then if we want to make even a bigger difference, then we need just a little bit of more money to continue doing what we've been doing. So my question is about any metrics, and if there is any tracking of participation of communities, especially those that with low English proficiency.
We'll let Luca answer that question.
Okay.
Sure.
Yes,
I can
I see
briefly
Luke
speak to
Delant.
that.
Please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Secretary. So to briefly answer that, we are in a situation where previously we had a little bit greater access to usable information. Unfortunately, our ability to leverage Google Analytics, which was the previously used tool for this purpose, is diminished due to changes that they have made. So we're going to continue looking for ways to compile meaningful statistics on this, but our ability has unfortunately diminished in the last 6 months or so since they've made that change.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Again, we have a Secretary of State with us, and also Chief of Staff and Elections Deputy Director with us. So council members, do not be shy. This is our great opportunity to ask questions.
Yeah, hello, my name is Sai. I am doing the Korean work here with this amazing team. I just wanted to personally share my gratitude for this program. It provides so much good resources for the Korean proficient immigrants here in Oregon. I was just wondering, because I just think this is such a great program and initiative. I'm wondering if this translation work will go beyond voting and into other maybe parts that I don't know in full detail, but like, is there an opportunity for this to scale and expand?
Luke, once again, please.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. So that is an excellent idea, and we have begun incorporating TAC feedback in some other areas, which has been much appreciated. There are some specific requirements in the statute, specifically the voter pamphlets, that the council spends the bulk of its time on. So we do have some obligations from the legislature that always have to be our first priority. And so that's why we're continuing to make sure we're most primarily focused on making sure that we are in the right budgetary position and getting all of that work done. But we are certainly interested in continuing to find ways to expand that role, because we really see how beneficial it is to have some of that additional feedback on translations, even outside of elections.
Yeah, could I add something to that too? I think, beyond the program that we're doing here, one of the things that we can do is we can talk about how this is working and try to encourage other agencies that when they're doing translation work to mimic our model or copy our model or build on it and make it even better. So I think talking about how this is working and specifically talking about it to legislators and other state agencies is like a really great thing to do. Maybe it won't be us doing that work, but if we can inspire other folks to do something similar, that seems worthwhile.
I see Tatiana Terdal has her hand up.
Yes, hi,
Tatiana,
good evening.
please.
I am representing Ukrainian language and Ukrainian community. I'm curious, other states that are doing similar work? And is it something that you talk to other states about?
Yes, there are ongoing meetings nationally for all kinds of issues having to do with elections, and certainly translation for different languages is one of the topics that's being discussed nationally. And so that's a good thing. I mean, there's this organization, NAS, the National Association of Secretary of State, and they mostly control elections in their states. And so that is one issue that's particularly of interest to them.
Thank you. Anastasia?
Thank you. This is Anastasia again. I wonder what civic education efforts for communities that speak languages other than English does Secretary of State office currently have, and if there is anything that's planned to start in the future?
I think Luke is probably the best person to answer that question, or Ben, because I'm not quite sure. And I haven't been here long enough to have absorbed all of that, I'm sorry to say, but that's an excellent question.
Sure, I can speak to that briefly. So with our current status, specifically within the elections division of the Secretary of State's office, we really have civic education programs that we have the TAC, of course, that has been doing the translation portions of work for the agency, and we're certainly interested in how we can apply translations and use them in other areas to expand that access. Right now, that is still very early, and things like large program expansions typically do take additional funding. So we're trying to explore where the most sensible avenues for expansion might be. And like Ben mentioned earlier, some of that work is likely to find its best home in a long legislative session where there's the opportunity to really press for sustaining funding for worthwhile programs like that.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to share a little bit about what we're doing on the executive team, which is what we call the Secretary's staff, separate from the elections division. What we're doing is we're taking our civic engagement materials, the voter registration materials, what we call GOTV or Get Out the Vote materials, and we are working to recruit partner organizations to then go out to the communities that they work with to get folks registered, remind them to vote. There are a lot of organizations in Oregon that have a lot greater reach than we do. And if we can activate them to do this work, we can have a bigger impact. So we are specifically targeting communities of color, communities that speak English as a second language or don't speak English in this outreach. By going to organizations that have a footprint in those communities. We're also working with groups that just have a large outreach in general. One of our favorite partners is the Portland Trail Blazers. They have a very large footprint in Oregon, reach a ton of people. When they post something on social media, it has a much greater impact than it does when we do. But to answer your question directly, when we're doing our outreach, we're specifically reaching culturally specific groups who work in different communities and in giving them the materials they need to go do this work. I would love it if we were able to create the kind of program that Luke was talking about within the agency. But we're not there yet, and it's something we'd like to work on in the next legislative session to build out.
Thank you, Ben and Luke.
Thank you. Renee, who is the next person who raised hand? I'm sorry, I was not tracking very closely.
Oh, no worries. It was technically me. I did have a few questions too, if that's okay. Okay.
Please
Hi,
go ahead.
I'm Renee. Yeah. So just kind of two kind of questions, but definitely, like, I agree with Sai. Like, I really love this program, and I'm so glad that it's created. I was just kind of piggybacking off of the civic education question. So is it like definitely a good idea then for like council members to also help and just connect with community organizations they know of? And then the second kind of question was going off of more of the talking to other state agencies. Do we think that potentially in the future we can have either council members speak to state agencies to like testify about experiences, or like can we have a more comprehensive model that's sent out as like a sort of training program if possible for other state agencies?
That would be great.
Yeah, I love that idea. To answer your first question, if you guys have any connections at groups that have outreach capabilities, if they have like a big social media page, a big email list, if they're doing canvassing, organizing, or anything like that, we would love to work with them, and we'd love to help you reach out to them. We're developing a toolkit for this right now that we can share. So feel free to get in touch with me. My email address is just my name, ben.morris@sos.oregon.gov. Same format as Kelly and Marcia. Feel free to reach out. I'd love to get plugged in with you on that. And then the second question was really interesting. We haven't, I don't know if we've talked about that with the secretary yet, but that's certainly something we'd be interested in following up on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is Tatiana? Who's next?
Hi, it's Tatiana again. Can you please write your email in the chat? Because I would love to connect with you to see what Ukrainian organizations are in your outreach. I also have a question about a citizenship ceremony. So I've been a guest in a number of ceremonies, citizenship ceremonies in Oregon, and often I see voter registration cards there at the ceremonies. I remember reviewing the translation of the voter registration card in Ukrainian. So I'm wondering, are you now also bringing those cards in different languages to the ceremonies?
I can answer that one if no one else will take it. Thanks, Tatiana. We're actually in the middle of redesigning the voter registration cards. And so we used end of biennium funds to get a head start on translating their voter registration cards into the additional 8 or 9 languages that we didn't currently have. So it's a little bit delayed, but Ukrainian and all the other languages have a great start. And that work group includes representatives from counties and experts from some of the federal elections commissions and their ideas for making voter registration cards more easily understood and usable. And we have about 3 more minutes, Tamara. There she is.
Yeah, we have time probably for a couple more questions. Who is the next?
I think Jing.
Jing? Please go ahead.
Can I speak now? Hi,
yes,
my name is Jing Liu, and I'm in the Chinese language team. Can you hear me?
Yes.
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 Oh, yes. I'm visiting my parents, so I'm talking from China.
Ah.
Yeah, so I'm particularly interested in what we do, what the state does for fighting against misinformation and disinformation. That's circulating in the non-native speaker community. So as much as we put in in the translation or outreaching, effort, I think it's very hard to find, it's challenging to find against the misinformation.
Yes.
Yeah, people who are new to this country or to the election, work are very weak. Yeah, and can be easily attacked, taken by misinformation. Yeah, we could work with some local, like Chinese organizations, but they could be biased. They could send their message to the community, which works better than our work. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm happy to take that one, Secretary, if you wouldn't mind.
That's fine, Ben. Thank you.
So there are two kind of key places where we're doing work against mis and disinformation. One of them is through broadcast communications, large scale communications through either advertising or the media. And that work is really centered around putting out positive messages about elections, basically trying to remind folks that our elections in Oregon are safe and secure and accurate. We have a great system. We have high turnout, high participation, those kind of messages. And the research shows that when people feel good about a system of voting, when they encounter false information in the future, they're more likely to ignore it. In the communications business, we refer to this as inoculation sometimes, or sometimes we use a word called pre-bunking, which is a terrible word. But instead of debunking a piece of false information, you pre-bunk it. You do it before people hear it. Anyway, but that stuff is an ongoing project we've been doing for 2 years, 2 or 3 years now, and has been very successful. In the last election, we were able to generate a 259% increase in the number of people who were visiting accurate election information online through this campaign, and that translates into hundreds of thousands of Oregonians who were accessing good information who probably wouldn't have otherwise without the campaign. So that's significant, and that is being done in multiple languages and specifically targeting media outlets that cater to non-English speakers in Oregon. And what we found is the campaign is more effective in translations than it is in English, which shows me that there's a real appetite for information among people who aren't speaking English primarily or who are consuming other media in other languages. So we get a higher rate of return when we translate the material and when we're doing the campaign in Spanish or Russian or Mandarin or Korean. So we want to do more of that. The other thing that we're working on is face-to-face outreach, and this is a harder one, but particularly in smaller counties outside of the metro areas, people really need to just talk to their county clerks and their local elections officials. So we have helped some county clerks set up town hall events. We've helped some organizations that do work in those areas get access to materials and briefings on elections so they can go talk to people about it. There's a lot being done. What I will say, though, is that we are fighting an uphill battle, and we need to be realistic that we don't have the resources and reach to win this fight right now. Maybe in the years to come we will, but it's not. In the next election, we'll have the people spreading mis and disinformation who are better resourced than we are, who have bigger platforms than we are. And it doesn't mean it's not worth doing all the work to fight back, but we have to be realistic that we're not the loudest voices in the room on that issue, and it will continue to be an issue for years to come, unfortunately.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, but I do appreciate Madam Secretary and Ben Morris and Luke Belond, you joining us today. We will be talking later today about the progress on several projects that the council members have been working on. And this work is done on top of translations and translation review work. So if you have time, we would love to have you stay with us for as long as you can, so that you could hear about the great work that this council is doing. I should say that this council is absolutely fantastic. It's a great team, and through my extensive volunteer experience, I've never been on any other council that is hands-on and is doing so much on their time and share their knowledge so generously. We hope we will have an in-person meeting in summer.
Yes.
And we hope that you will be able to join us for that meeting. And for now, thank you so much for today's participation in our meeting. And as I said, you're welcome to stay as long as you can.
Thank you. I have another event I need to go to tonight. Personal, family, grandchild birthday.
We understand.
I appreciate your work so much. We are very, very fortunate in this pretty small state to have a representative group of non-English speakers and who are willing to help us fight this battle to make sure that every voter has access to information, correct information, and know about how to vote in Oregon. It's pretty easy here. And we make it easier. We all make it easier by virtue of having translations available to folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope we'll meet again in the summer. Is that what you indicated?
Yeah, in-person meeting will be in summer, or we will have another virtual meeting at the end of January or February. So if your time allows, we would love to have you join our meetings in the future.
Thank you. I really appreciate Ben and Luke also joining us. Thank you,
Yeah,
everybody.
this invitation extends to Ben and Luke as well.
Okay, good. So I'm going to say good night. Thank you. And thank all of you for your very hard work.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Yes, good night.
Good night. Okay, let's move on to the next agenda item, approval of the minutes of the April 15th meeting. You received the minutes alongside with other materials for the meeting, and so we are to approve these minutes now. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
This is Anastasia Gatsi. I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Anastasia. Can I have a second?
This is Carolina Frank, and I second the motion.
Thank you. Thank you. Any changes or amendments to the minutes? Hearing none, I suggest that we vote in chat, just as we did last time. It definitely saves time for other conversations. Please type in yes or no to approve or not to approve the minutes. And just a reminder, all votes are part of the public record. And for those who call by phone, please unmute yourself by pressing *6 and provide a verbal vote. Or you can send your vote via email to tac.info@sos.oregon.gov. Please vote. Unfortunately, I cannot see the chat. So, Martha, if you could tell me when everybody has voted.
And you said that you had voted yes.
Yes.
Waiting on Cy. It's the only one I don't have a. You have the majority that's here has voted yes.
Okay, thank you. The minutes are approved by majority of vote. Thank you, everyone, who voted. Moving on to the next agenda item. Last summer, it was 1 year since this council gathered for its inaugural meeting. So it was important for us to get your feedback about the work we've done during the first year. It was very good to hear about our accomplishments and challenges, and together your thoughts about the future for this council. Now I will ask Kelly Mills, Translation Policy Program Manager, to share with us the results of this 1 year engagement survey. Kelly, please take it away.
Thanks, Tamara. Great. Okay, so yes, we did 2 surveys during the first year. After the first meeting when we did orientation in July of 2022, and then again, I think around December. So we were just trying to feel out what it was the council was doing and how much time it takes, and if you signed up for what you thought you signed up for, because it's a brand new program. And we had about 14 members respond to the survey, and it was quite positive. I just put this quote from the survey. Just seems like we've got a good start and we should keep moving forward. Next slide, Martha. And so your officers were interested in knowing about what you benefit, how you benefit from being on the council professionally and personally. And so as you can see, people found that they were feeling like they were serving their communities, people who speak languages other than English. And also we have, as you know, translator members as well as at large, but the majority are translator members. So the opportunity to work with other peers in the translation area and learn and consult with each other on very specific elections terminology. Professional growth was cited. And of course, learning about elections, which I will say has been a great growth opportunity for me too in my new role here. And also people felt motivated to connect with elections and government. I know some of the people in some of the surveys mentioned they wanted to help others learn how to become more involved in elections, or maybe even volunteer with their communities and government. One thing we are always concerned about is the workload. This is a volunteer position, and there are stipends. Thankfully, the Secretary of State's office is very generous in offering stipends for volunteers. So I guess you can see here about a little over half who participated think that the work is about right. They're not unexpectedly spending time, but we all know that it has taken a lot of time to do this work. And then we still have, I think, especially in the languages, the top 5 languages that have every single pamphlet that is produced has Spanish, Chinese, Russian, Vietnamese, and Korean. And so those teams can be challenged to get it all done, whereas French or German may be in just one county in the state pamphlet. So that's what we were hearing from you. Next slide. Some other comments were to consider the ways that we divide up the work and try to balance the issues that come from having different styles and people with differing ideas about how things should be translated so that we're being consistent. And so we'll be talking a little bit later today about the glossary and the style guide that's helped in that area. Also, when we first started, we heard from you that you would like to hear, would like to close the feedback loop. When you provide reviews, you want to know if the translation teams that we're working with, the professional translators, are accepting your suggestions. So we revised the review form and began offering an opportunity where the translator would choose accepted, partially accepted, or not accepted, with some comments in many cases. And so since then, I've been trying to share those comments and go back to you when it seems like there is a difference of ideas about that. And so most of you, well, actually, the people who took the survey are feeling like that feedback loop is improving. And other comments about the feedback loop is to create more collaborative review processes. As you know, we use FileShare to send things out, and we haven't had the opportunity to work in, for example, Google Docs. But that is definitely something. January, we put in a request to our IT department. And actually, we're having a meeting next week to follow up on that. So we're asking for tools that would make it possible for you to see in real time comments that your peers have made in the same language, so that it would be more collaborative and less isolating. Also reviewing assignments between members in the languages that have more than one speaker. And considering how that happens, it was a very busy, heavy workload this summer when we did the glossary and the style guide. I think Sai told me today it was 70 pages, that glossary, with the definitions. So it's important to consider that. And then we did get a request to work on our emails that we're sending out to you, and finding a balance between providing information and but keeping them concise. And so I know there's a lot of information that comes out, especially in these formative years. So we will be taking that under consideration. Other ideas that came out of this? People are interested in doing more translations of more county pamphlets, and that's starred there with an asterisk. So right now, maybe you're not familiar, but not every county produces pamphlets because it requires a county local government budget. And so we are providing translations to 13 counties when they produce them, and they don't do them in every election. So that would take funding either at the local level or at the state level. As I think Tatiana brought it up earlier, connecting with colleagues and also Renee in other states and federal offices. So there are translation advisory councils. I think, the movement kind of started in California, in some of the more diverse counties, Los Angeles County, for example. And then also at their Secretary of State's office. And I'm not familiar with other states that have a council like ours, but for example, Colorado has a Spanish council. So interested in exploring that. And then the favorite topic of this group, community outreach and engagement. And so some of the specific ideas came out about youth engagement work, and then continuing work on our TAC toolkit. I think the community outreach group will be reporting on that. And I know all of you have worked on reviewing those materials this summer, but they are focusing on areas, let's see, the who, what, where, when, why, the reasons and how you can vote, and then expanding that into some other areas. And as I mentioned before, that is budget dependent because the legislature didn't provide funds beyond the voters' pamphlets in the original bills and laws. So we are dependent on the end of biennium funds, which we were really fortunate to have at the end of this last biennium.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Anything else that you'd like to add, or?
Yeah, I just wanted to say also we're leading the pack of the states, and New York does a lot too. So we definitely have some places to reach out, and we have also been able to follow the great example of the Federal Elections Assistance Commission in creating the glossary and developing our own Oregon-specific materials. So thank you for doing the survey. It's probably still open if you'd like to share your ideas, or if you'd like the link again, or of course you can send ideas in anytime.
Yeah, thank you to those who already participated. And I just want to emphasize that we are always open to receive your feedback through surveys or any other means of communication, such as via email or phone. So if you have any bright ideas, please do not hesitate to share them with us. And thank you, Kelly, for the review of the survey results. And now we are moving on to the next agenda item, and we will listen to the report of the bylaws work group. So Magda coordinated the work of this group, and group members Loie, Fleur, Lowell, Sai, and Tamara participated in multiple meetings. The goal of the work group was to provide draft laws for council vote in November. And this is exactly what they are doing today on the very first day of November. So now I will ask Magda, the work group coordinator, to provide information about the work they performed. Magda, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tamara. I just want to make sure that you can hear me okay.
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah, wonderful.
Great, thank you. Well, good evening. And staff, Secretary of Staff members, and everyone here tonight. My name is Magda Bejarano, and I am an at-large member of the Translation Advisory Council. Tonight, I will be providing a report of the work of the bylaws group for your consideration and voting, like Tamara explained. The bylaws that we are presenting today, are built on the guidelines provided by House Bill 3021, the Oregon Administrative Rules and Statutes that apply to our council, the Membership Handbook, and the Members' Code of Collaboration. This slide that you are looking at shows an overview of our process to develop the document that we'll be voting on tonight. The work group started working in March of this year to draft the bylaws. Of March, we began to become familiar with how bylaws are put together, and we reviewed a very initial draft facilitated by our friends from the Secretary of State. This first draft helped us start identifying topics that were essential to the council's functioning, and also topics that were important to the members of the work group. Later in April of this year, we facilitated a work session during our regular council meeting and brought a list of topics before the other council members that were part of the work session to be considered and discussed. That was a very productive meeting. We spent time listening to the perspective of all the members that were present, and we were able to reach consensus around most of the topics that we were discussing during the meeting. Also on that day, we provided an update to the entire council through a brief presentation after the work session. The work group spent the months of May, June, and July organizing all the feedback and ideas that we had received from the members and working on improving the draft of the document. In addition to that, the Secretary of State staff was very helpful in helping us check the recommendations we were crafting against the existing guidelines and statutes that regulate the council to ensure that we were in alignment and in compliance with those. During the month of August, we received consultation by the Secretary of State Legal Counsel, which is the Department of Justice, and also had consultation with the leadership of the Secretary of State. This was a really great learning opportunity, and also the feedback provided by them helped us continue ensuring that our recommendations were aligned with the statutes already in place, and also that the bylaws, they are recommending them, responsive and conducive to the council's mission, which is to provide Oregon voters with culturally sensitive pamphlets at every election. We also received advice on legal language and on the general structure. As a work group, we began focusing our efforts on the duties of the council members, the expectations of engagement, and the consequences of non-participation or consequences of being unavailable to conduct reviews, which are both very central and important to our role. We determined that non-engagement in council activities included being absent from meetings, being unavailable for reviews, or being unresponsive to communications by the Secretary of State staff. Part of the feedback that we received from the Department of Justice was to be more specific with the criteria that would result in a recommendation for dismissal of a member, or to determine that a member was or is not in compliance with the expectations of the council. So besides identifying the reasons, we needed to be very specific and answer questions like, how many meetings can a member miss before we determine the member is not engaging? How many reviews can a member miss before we determine that is not effective for the council?
Excuse me, Marcia, could you please move to the next slide?
Please think, Tamara, if it's okay, I would like to stay on this slide a little bit, because we're going to go next to review the details. Okay. So if that's okay, we can continue here. I also wanted to note here, during the month of May, our feedback from the Secretary of State leadership, kind of reminding that the council meets between 2 to 4 times per year. We have 7 meetings per biennium. So an absence can mean, an absence per year can mean that a member misses 50% of our meetings. And we have 4 reviews per year, and missing one of those reviews can put big stress in the process of providing community members with the translations needed for elections. So we received all this feedback, discussed them as a group, and crafted our final recommendations, which are included in the final draft of the document that you received as part of the materials for this meeting. Some of the month of September, we spent finalizing the draft with the help again of the Secretary of State staff. And so now if we can go to the next slide. So as you see, this slide shows the general structure of the bylaws. And as you see, our focus was placed on what is now Article 8 of the document, which describes the expectation for members' conduct and the reasons for dismissal recommendations. Most of the other articles in the documents relate to topics that are standard or that are already considered in existing statutes or administrative rules for the council, so no modifications were made on those sections. I want to just kind of bring to your attention the details of Article 8. In general, the expectation is that members actively engage in the work of the council. If a member doesn't meet the expectations, there will be a recommendation to the Secretary of State to dismiss the member. And as part of the specific requirements for members, we noted 5 points. Members must respond to emails with subject lines, action needed or response requested. Members can miss one election review before being recommended for dismissal. Members can miss one council meeting per year before being recommended for dismissal. Members must complete paperwork, orientation, and training by the deadlines established in the handbook. And members are required to notify and to use only official materials when representing the council in an official capacity outside council meetings. So these are the expectations that the work group is recommending. And leave some space for questions that you might have, clarification about the content of the bylaws or the process.
Thank you very much, Magda, and the work group. Great work. And thanks to the Office of Secretary of State for supporting this work and providing legal advice. Any questions or comments? You probably have had the opportunity to review this document because you received it prior to the meeting. Hearing no questions, I suggest that we proceed with voting on approval of the bylaws. Can I have a motion to approve the bylaws as presented?
This is Carolina Frank, and I present a motion to approve the bylaws.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
This is for Fleur.
I second.
I did not catch who seconded.
Neither did I.
I was muted. I second.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Now let's vote on in the chat, as we did for the minutes, on approval of the council bylaws. All in favor, please type in yes. All opposed, write no. And I will remind that for those who call in, please unmute yourself by pressing *6 and provide a verbal vote, or you can send your vote by an email to tag.info@sos.oregon.gov. And one more reminder, all votes are part of the public record. Marcia, for the record, I vote yes. Marcia, please let me know when majority has voted.
The only one I'm waiting to hear anything from is Angelo. Give him a moment.
Can you hear me?
Yes, what would your vote be, Angelo?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
That is everybody, and everybody said yes.
Thank you very much. So the Translation Advisory Council bylaws are approved. Thank you for your unanimous support to this document. And I just want to thank the work group again and Magda for doing a tremendous work on this document. And you've heard that they've done so much coordination and reviewing and writing and rewriting. But now we have this official document that will guide our activities in the future. And I want to ask Magda to talk a little bit more about recommendations that the work group developed. These bylaws are based on existing legislative provisions. And if the legislature changes, this will trigger some changes to the bylaws. And on the council can also initiate a recommendation to make some changes to the legislature. And I will ask Magda to talk about this. Please, Magda.
Yes, thank you, Tamara, and everybody for your vote. Quickly, want to second thanking everyone that participated in the work group, in the work session, and being engaged throughout the process. During the process, we learned, like I said, a lot, and we learned that there are some topics of interest to the council members that cannot be modified or amended through our bylaws because they are set in statute or in Oregon administrative rules. So 2 examples of those issues that were important for, or that we heard feedback about, where one is the council composition. Our council has a number of members per language. Some languages have more members than others, and that also means that some members are used more intensely or required more often, and so one of the recommendations we heard was to discuss the option of having at least 2 members per language to facilitate that peer review process and share the load. Another topic that came up was the qualifications for the members of the council, and to modify some of the language in a statute regarding, for example, the experience that someone has providing interpretation or translation, or the type of degree that we have. So we wanted to ask the council tonight to consider further reviewing and discussing these topics at a future meeting. And if the council believes that language in statute or the administrative rules need to be modified, then voting on making a recommendation to the Secretary of the State to make these changes. Are there any questions about that I can answer? Or any additions, Tamara or Kelly or any of the work group members?
Thank you very much, Magda, and thanks again to the work group. I see Anastasia has a question or comment. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Tamara. This is Anastasia. I have a question. So as we heard previously, there are 6 languages in the state that require translation of pretty much all county pamphlets. And so that creates a larger workload for those 6 languages. Would it be possible to increase the number of translator members for those 6 languages, say from 2 to at least 4, so that the work can be more equally distributed?
I can try to answer that. So Anastasia, I think that is the number of members per language is something addressed by the statute. And to make changes to that, we would have to change the statute, which is done the council must recommend the Secretary of the State to make a change. There is a process that we can follow, and part of what we would like to bring to the council is that if this is a topic of interest, we could perhaps discuss it as part of a future meeting and decide whether we want to make the recommendation to the Secretary of State to make the changes.
Yeah, all these ideas, they require more discussion amongst ourselves, and then sending recommendation to the Secretary of State. And so I suggest that we have a more detailed discussions of these recommendations and any other recommendations that may come up at one of the future meetings, and probably set up a separate work group, unless this current work group wants to continue working on this topic. But maybe some other people will volunteer to work on developing recommendations for the Secretary of State to take to make certain amendments to the statutes and to revise Oregon rules, so that. But again, the big consideration would be budget availability. So we should be mindful of things that are very important and are hard to control. Please send your suggestions. Now that we have this document, look at it again, see what can be done through recommendations to the Secretary, but this would be a lengthy process. Okay, I will thank Magda again for all the work and the work group, excellent, thorough work. Now let's take a 10-minute break. It's 7:10, so let's get together at 7:20. See you soon. Welcome back, everyone. Let's start the second part of our meeting, and we will proceed to the next agenda item. It's community outreach reports. So almost from the very beginning, many of you were talking about the need to do more community outreach, which will be culturally specific. And to address this need, we created a special work group that has been working on developing a toolkit. This group was led by Renee with a lot of help from Catalina, and the group included Haruka, Jing, Fernando, Sutapa, and Tamara. So they were working on developing a toolkit that will help the elections division and this council, or all of us, to have materials that can be used for outreach to low English proficiency communities. And today, Renee and Catalina will provide an update on the work they've done. Take it away, Renee and Catalina.
Awesome. Yeah. So we've done a lot these past few months. And so it's been wonderful seeing the stuff that we've been able to do. If we can go on to the next slide. So this is essentially the culmination of a few months of work for us. And we are definitely still in the process of still refining everything. But for now, we have come up with a preliminary toolkit. One key thing that we want to note about the toolkit is that originally we were thinking that this toolkit might only be for council members. So council members can request it for use, and we can potentially help print out like materials for any outreach events and have these for council members. But we are now changing it so that it is going to be more focused on providing resources for council members, as well as for community members that would like to potentially use some of the resources that we've gathered in the translated materials for outreach to their communities. So this will be essentially a link that we send out to council members if council members want to use it, and for community members if they send in a request for these materials ahead of time. So the link won't be completely public, but it will just be invite only. So once community members request it, then we will send the link over for this toolkit for people to essentially put in how many of each resource they want to have. But essentially, the TAC toolkit currently consists of a few different things. So one is the public speaking talking points. So this is essentially just a one-pager that contains all of the different information that you should try to talk upon if you're doing a registration event or you're going to another community event where you have a booth, for example. These are just a few main points to hit on. So that would be how to vote, how to fill out the voter registration cards, maybe why you should vote, and different resources for any voting accommodations that you might need, and voter eligibility requirements. So these are just in a one-pager for that. There's also a translated voting in Oregon handout, as well as a quick guide to voting accommodations that have been worked on by a lot of different council members these past few months as well in translating all of these materials. We also have the translated voter registration cards. I know that some groups language groups have already started working on those in terms of translating, and Kelly definitely mentioned too that we are also in the process of making adjustments to the design of them. So they're still pending, but they will also be part of our overall toolkit that we offer. There are also register to vote and social media explainers. So we offered a little glimpse of what these might look like a bit later back in another meeting, but essentially these are just a little square posts that has translated information on how to register and other little succinct explainers like that is also offered. And we also have a lot of multilingual swag that is very exciting. So there's pens with the logo for vote on it in different languages, and then also like window stickers, as well as notepads that you can request. But yeah, so these are essentially used $22,653 as stated at the bottom from the biennium, and this is essentially what we can come up with. All right, and then I'll pass it off to Catalina to talk about next steps. Okay, never mind. So these are just kind of like some images of essentially what everything looks like. So you can see those are the swag, the images on there in the handouts. Next slide. All right, now I'll pass it off to Catalina.
Okay, so a little bit of the back end story of how things happened. We were in a little bit of a pickle because we needed to use those funds, the $22,000 that, you know, we needed to use them somehow. So Kelly and the team got really busy and got us to meet with the Secretary of State's communication team, and Ben was part of the meeting as well as the social media designer. And Renee and I were able to represent all of you guys' ideas and needs to use first any materials that were existing that we could quickly turn around and translate by the end of June so that we could use those funds. That's how that list of items was picked out. Basically what we had that we could quickly turn around and have something for the toolkit. Now, what you see on what we will develop in the future, the why to vote, that is so important for us, the beginning on why go through all of the process that we are trying to teach our constituents, will hopefully develop as part of the second or the next BMEM budget. We collaborated with the Secretary of State Communications Office, and I am very pleased to say that our ideas were welcomed. And so you could see, if you remember, during the summer, we were asked to contribute our opinion and lived experiences regarding redesigning their branding in the new look and feel with mood boards and logos, to make sure that we could provide information of the new communications being culturally appropriate, as well as easily understood by our communities. So I feel like if we continue to collaborate with the Secretary of State Communications team in this manner, especially with the PSA campaign that got funded, we will be able to expand to those other materials that we're hoping for, like the videos and the why to vote, make it expanded to other languages and get more and more use of the money. So please keep your ideas coming. We're a very open and welcoming committee. So yeah, that's pretty much in a nutshell what the work has been about.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you, Catalina, for this presentation, and big thanks to the work group on the work well done. I also want to extend thanks to the Secretary of State Communications team and Elections Division for supporting this work. It was great teamwork, and as a result, we are getting much needed resources for community outreach. Please feel free to use these resources as appropriate, and share any feedback you receive from your communities as you are promoting this information and these materials. It would be extremely important and valuable to continue to expand community engagement and outreach work as part of our related council activities. So voters in our communities, as the Secretary of State said, need to know more about the elections process in Oregon and about voting and registration and about candidates and measures. So these materials will help you to promote this information. And in a separate email, you will receive a link to download a form that you can use to request these materials and swag items as well. And you can use these materials and swag items in your community outreach work. And as we are using these tools, I'm sure you will be getting some feedback from community members about how impactful these materials are, or maybe something needs to be revised or amended. Feel free to share this information with us so that we could make appropriate changes. And well, it's important work, and it's hard to say. It's never too much, at least at this time, to educate our voters about elections. And thank you very much for doing this. And here are the resources for you to do impactful community outreach. Okay, so we can move on to the next agenda item. For the last year, we were heavily involved in developing the glossary of election terminology. It has been a huge effort and a heavy lift that involved the elections division staff and the state contractor and council members, all of you. So we did not start from scratch. We built on some existing glossaries and adapted them to the needs of Oregon and perfected these glossaries, I would say. Now, Kelly will provide an update on the status of this project for different languages. Kelly, please take it away.
Thank you. Yes, when I look back, I can't believe we actually took on this mammoth project for the first year, but thank you, everyone. I wanted to acknowledge also we have bilingual election staff in several counties, Multnomah, Washington, and Clackamas County now, who have been contributing to the project as well. And the photos in today's presentation came from the April 15th meeting where people broke out into their language groups and or worked individually on the glossaries. So it's just been really a big project. Thank you. And it takes all of us to really produce something useful. So I want you to guess, some of you know, in the chat, if you want to play, how many words do you think are in the glossary and how many pages do you think it is? Well, it depends on your language. Russian uses a lot of extra characters, I've noticed. Extra, I mean, meaningful, important characters. So how many pages and how many words? It's a lot.
Yeah.
I'm seeing new messages. Yes. Wow. Someone who's not even on the council is winning over 70 pages. It kind of depends. It's a trick question. Stage 2, well, stage 1 was making the list, and we built on existing glossaries, and then we asked the council after their first November general election, words that they thought we should add. So thank you very much. So that was stage 1, is making the list. And then stage 2 was translating the terminology. And so, of course, we had to have the English glossary and then work to translate the terms. There are over 500 words. I can't remember the exact, but it's just under 500 words. And so let's see, is that, I always count here, 8 languages: Arabic, French, German, Japanese, Tagalog, Thai, and Ukrainian. That is complete for the first iteration, and it's online. And I haven't made the big announcement that it's online. I see Tatiana smiling because I kind of wanted it to settle. But if you are one of the members of those languages, it's online on the Translation Advisory Council resources page. You could take a look. You know, it looks different when you see it online and it's real. So those languages are there. And then we're still working on Marshallese at stage 2. And stage 3, this was again end of biennium funds. We don't have funds to make a glossary, but the work, what happened is the legislature basically funded us for 2 years, but the project didn't really start until January of 22. So that's why we had end of biennium funds, and we were able to use those to pay for translations. And the reason I bring that up is because stage 3, we took the 5 most common state languages, of course, that we have the most readership, or we should be having the most readership, and we worked on the definitions. So if you're in those languages, you've been working since August, reviewing the definitions of 70 pages and almost 500 words. And Anastasia put 131 pages. I imagine it depends on what your script is and the language. So yes, we're going to say at least 70 pages and up to 150. And if you've done the definitions. So we collected those reviews from you October 23rd, just a week ago. And right now we're consolidating them and looking for things that we can pass along to our vendor. For the languages that have more than one speaker, we put them together. Some of you worked in groups like the Vietnamese members and Russian. And that's wonderful because then we don't have conflicting ideas. And we're going to be putting those together through Thanksgiving. And then I plan to send them to Barbier, our vendor translator, in December. So hopefully by the new year, stage 3 will be close to being done for at least 5 languages. There's something else I was going to say about that. I'll remember it. And then we will be going forward, hopefully at the end of the current biennium, 23 to 25, we'll tackle the definitions of the other languages. So it's a work in progress. And that's the next point. It's a work in progress. And we planned, we're not able to staff to correct things constantly because it requires multiple, it's like a chain telephone game. You tell us something, then we pass it along to our translators, and then they respond, and back and forth. And also, it's difficult to manage a project like that. So the original plan was that we will accept any of your suggestions at any time. We know there's errors that need to be corrected, and it could be typos, but it could be translations. We'll accept those anytime. You can send them to us from TAC Info, and we're compiling a list right now. And we just finished the November election pamphlets, which was a relatively large election. And because everyone used the glossary for the first time, translators loaded into their memory translation database, and then all of you used it when you were reviewing. You're all in the mode right now. We had a meeting last week with our translators at Barbier, and we agreed that because we're all in the rhythm right now of using the new glossary and really seeing it for the first time, and we've gotten a lot of feedback, that we would like to go ahead and do that annual review for the new year. Probably in January. As I said, we'll pass things along in December. It also works better for our schedule. We have some very big elections coming up in 2024. The May primary and the general election are going to be very, very big projects. So just shifting that concept a little bit. And the bottom line here is we will accept anything you'd like to send in right now through Thanksgiving. About the glossary or things that you see when you go and look online, for example. I got a nice list from several of you on several of the languages. Are there any questions about that process? It was very interesting. Very interesting. And I learned a lot. And I was going to say also the community outreach group. Thank you. I learned a lot about transcreation and localization, which is interesting terms in translation work and marketing.
Thank you very much, Kelly, for this update. I personally noticed in recent translations that there was a much more consistency with translating terminology, election-related terminology, and I hope that other reviewers, other council members made similar observation. So this definitely contributes to better quality of election materials. And the glossary is a very valuable resource because it streamlines the translations, and I really appreciate the teamwork on it.
Thank you, Tamara. I do too. And I would like to say that for Marcia and myself, we look at every single comment that you make, and we recognize this election that it was much more streamlined. There was more agreement and more uniformity, which is making everyone's work easier. And also, you've noticed, the static text of general information is repeated with slight variations each election. So the glossary is really valuable, and our translators are using it in their translation memory database. Very cool tool. So send things in by Thanksgiving. And I'll let you do it on Monday. It's a 4-day weekend for some of us. Monday after Thanksgiving. Okay, and then the next one is the style guide. Okay, so the style guide. This is a very interesting project. Again, we look at everything that you submit to us, and then we work with the translators. And obviously, we don't speak all of or read or write almost any of your languages. But we found in the first elections in November, and then there was a smaller one in March with 2 counties, there's all kinds of inconsistencies, preferences. We got feedback from the translators. We got feedback from some of you. I don't know if Iman's still on, but we fought with Arabic right to left, and it flips. And so, questions come up like, in a language like that, do you write phone numbers in the same order? Do you write addresses in English? And what is the purpose of the voters pamphlet? So we did some research and consulted with some of you, asked questions. And one of the big things that came out of this is the purpose of the pamphlet is a written document for people living here who are relatively familiar in their local area. So drop boxes, for example, when you're going to go to the supermarket, they might have a drop box, or what is it, A1 Boy Auto Repair, I don't know, in Multnomah County. And so we landed on the idea that, and it makes the translations bulkier, but we wanted to retain proper nouns and addresses and names of people, names of government offices and Dropbox locations like libraries and city halls. We wanted to have that in English as well as the translation. And so that people can use it. If they're going to use Google Maps, they can put in the right address. Or if they want to go online and read about a ballot measure, they can find, the Scappoose School District. Lots of misspellings on Scappoose. And so that's kind of the things that we were wrangling with. And then in May, we put together just a really basic list of the things that we had learned, and continued to work towards, this was with Barbier also, work towards having a usable glossary. We thought by August, didn't work out. So November was what we landed on. And this is a list of things. I think you've all seen it. Some of you loved it. Some of you have some feedback, but this is generally what it includes. And this, like the glossary, is going to be a very dynamic document. And the purpose is standardization between translators and reviewers and readers, but also we know that there are differences between cultures and languages, and so we want to recognize that too. So like the glossary, we are accepting right now your comments on that. I think we had some comments right away about currency and how we express time. Some cultures use military time. And the thing I want to share is we want to think about the end user and where they live and how they will use the voters' pamphlets. So maybe in your country you use military time, but in the United States it's not that familiar. You know, which way should it be for readers living in the United States? Fleur and I had and Rania had a great conversation about the different use of commas versus, let's see, what is it in French? Commas in numbers or periods, and then currency signs and decimals and things like that. So please send in your materials and your ideas through Thanksgiving. And I can take questions about the style guide also.
Thank you, Kelly. Definitely, this style guide will be another resource that will make our work easier and translations more consistent and uniform. Any questions, any comments? We do not have much time, but if you have something to share, please go ahead.
So what I think I was going to say was I was trying to remember what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention. Yes, that's how the style guide started. We needed something, and we know it's going to be changing, and we really welcome your input and learned a lot. And there may be other things that need to be added in terms of not just what we choose, but not just what we choose to use, but what the categories are.
Well, that's why Kelly called this document dynamic glossary and style guide, dynamic documents that we will be perfecting over years. And your input is very, very important.
I thought of one more thing, Tamara, that's very important. Yes. As you know, when you give your reviews, we ask if you mention grammar as a reason for an edit, that you give us a grammatical resource or, you know, some kind of reference that we can use instead of it just sounds better. Because we'd love to take your suggestions and edits, but we have committed to making sure that the translations are grammatically correct. And so one of the things the style guide we really need input on is if there's a linguistic language authority for your language that we should list in the style guide, then when there's a question on German or French, we can refer our translators to that. This is the authority that we're using. And we only have it for a couple of languages right now, so that's something we're requesting.
Yeah, great. We'll be doing that. Okay, let's move on to the next agenda item. So the next legislative session is fast approaching, and now I will ask Kelly to talk about the main legislative dates for the next year, and hope this information will help you in planning your other activities so that you can make yourselves available for translation reviews. Please, Kelly.
Yes. Upcoming dates. So as Ben and the secretary, I think, mentioned, the short legislative session is in February. It will run through the end of March. And as he mentioned, Senator Casey Jama, I think from the Clackamas area, is reintroducing what was Senate Bill 169. And we talked about that last December. It didn't pass in the last session, mostly because there weren't people working in the in the House to vote on it. So it changes the language formulas. It makes it more expansive to the top 10 county languages. Right now it's the top 5. For languages with at least 300 speakers, according to American Community Survey, most recent data from the census. So, and just like before, we anticipate if that passed, it would add the languages of Romanian, Somali, traditional Chinese characters. Right now we do simplified, and what am I missing? Armenian, Somali,
Farsi.
Farsi. That's right. So Iranian and Afghani immigrants would be served by that, and it would affect primarily the Portland metropolitan area counties, Washington, Multnomah, Clackamas. Their language list would grow. So that'll be there, and there may be an opportunity to testify or provide written testimony again. So we'll let you know. 2024 is just around the corner. We will have 4 quarterly elections, we anticipate anyway, and that's because counties can run elections 4 times a year outside of their emergency and recall elections. The first one would be in March, and we would be working on that beginning in January. Can't believe it. May, I want to bold that one. That's the primary statewide election. So like the very first one we worked on together, every language will be in the state voters pamphlet, and then each county will have their languages, which ranges from 5 to 7 languages at this time. And then November of 2024 is the general election. So very big. Again, here I'm going to ask you if you want to play how many. Okay, so the November 2023 election we just finished had 163,375 words. I'm putting that in the chat. How many words do you think were in the November 22 election? So a very big statewide election. If compared to the November one we just finished, you can do it as a range. And I'll just keep talking here and then I'll tell you the answer. So we're going to begin with the March election. Multnomah County prints their translations, so they start much earlier. We have 4 languages on our council that we need reviewers for a weekend in January. 8 languages the end of January, long weekend. And then 5 languages will be reviewing ballot measures beginning of February. So we give the translators extra time to work on those top 5 languages because there are thousands of words. And I've learned that 2,500 words a day is typical in the industry, and we're really pushing it. And then finally, when we do an election, we have webpage reviews. We check formatting, especially on Arabic, and we would need your help on that. So I will be sending out the calendar, the TAC calendar for the March election, and we're close to finalizing the May primary as well. So you can get those dates on your calendar. Tamara, did you want to talk about meetings this year?
Yeah, sure.
Wait.
Yeah.
Kelly, tell them how many words are in November
I'm typing it.
2022.
Da-da-da-dun.
Who is the closest?
It's a lot. Yeah, who won? Over 700,000 words, guys. That was our first one.
Wow.
We did a little tiny one in December for Yamhill, 170 words. Thank you, Loie. Yay. This Arthur is just really, he should be on the council. Hitting it every time. Okay, you want to talk about the council meetings?
Sure. So the 2023-25 budget includes funding for 7 meetings of the council per biennium, and this includes 1 in-person meeting per year. So today's meeting is the first meeting in the biennium, and we plan to have another virtual meeting at the end of January or beginning of February next year. As to the in-person meeting, tentatively, we are planning to have it in July 2024. We planned this meeting for this time of the year in summer so that newly appointed members could join the meeting and meet other members in person. And speaking about new appointments, well, you know, time flies. When the council was established in summer 2022, members were appointed for 2 and 3 year terms. This different term appointment was done on purpose to avoid a situation when membership would expire for the entire council at the same time. So with 2 and 3 year terms, in summer next year, half of the members will remain and then new members will join the council. So this will ensure continuity in our work and transfer of institutional knowledge. So next summer, the term of 12 members will expire. On the screen, you see the names of council members whose term is to expire in summer 2024. I want to give big thanks to these people for their contribution. And if you want to continue for another term, we certainly would love to have you stay with the council. According to bylaws, which we adopted today, just today, members may seek reappointment through an application process. A member may be reappointed for maximum of 2 terms, not to exceed 6 years. The bylaws also say that the secretary will fill vacancies from the pool of past and current applications. If no qualified applicant exists in the applicant pool, the secretary will open a recruitment to solicit applications. So for those whose term is expiring next summer, the process is going to be as follows. If you see your name on the screen, you would like to continue as a council member, you will receive an email and you can respond to this email by January 1st, expressing your decision to continue as a member of the council. And again, we would love to have you stay with the council. However, if you are not planning to reapply, please spread the word about this opportunity in your community and encourage interested and qualified community members to apply. So regardless of your decision, we very much appreciate the work you've done with translation and translation reviews and working on glossary and some other projects that the council was working on. So any questions? Okay, and I have one more piece of information to share tonight. It's a bittersweet piece of information. Our Marsa is moving on to a different position, fortunately within the elections division of the Secretary of State office. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Marsa for tremendous support that she has been providing to this council and individual members during the most important time when this council has been establishing. So thank you very much, Marsa, for being with us and we wish you best of luck as you enter into a new chapter in your career. And Marsa, if you want to say a few words, please.
Well, thank you for all your guys' work. I've enjoyed working with all of you. Fun part is part of my new responsibilities will be working on the English voters pamphlet, so for the state. So I will have it inside, and so we'll be able to get you guys good information that way. But like I said, I'm still here at the election, so if you got random election questions, just yell. But we're still in transition period too, so not totally going away. We are going to fill in behind. I know that process is in motion. So this probably is my last meeting unless for some reason there isn't somebody coming in by the time you have your next meeting. But I was like, no, I don't want to be that bad. But no, I've enjoyed working with all of you, and you guys are doing such great work. And I'm glad I was able to be here for that period. I will note this is limited duration, so it's till the June 2025. So that's as far as out as I know. So you may see me again.
You will always be welcome back, Marcia. Thank you. Thank you. And best of luck with your new job. So we are at 8 p.m. So we've covered all the agenda items for today. It was a very, very productive meeting, and thank you all for active participation and for the work you do. The next meeting will be scheduled at the end of January, for the end of January or early February. With the holiday season coming, I wish all the best to you and your dear ones, and see you in the new year. Thank you all, and have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you for having me. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Enjoy.